Good morning, children. Well, we have finished our chapter number 3 and now I'm going to take up chapter number 4 from Vistas. And the name of the chapter is Enemy. And this chapter has been written by Pearl S. Buck. Pearl S. Buck has explained, has detailed a story from World War number 2. Before I start this chapter, let me tell you what an enemy is. Who is an enemy? You all know the term enemy. A person with whom we have a contention. We don't have good relations, right? And we don't want to see him. And if he comes in front of us, in front of our eyes, certainly we would be ready to hurt him to any extent. An evil feeling for a person, and he is called the enemy. Here in this story, there are two enemies against each other: Japan and USA, America. Japan had attacked upon America and America retaliated. One of its navy ship attacked upon Japan, and one of the navy person, one of the navy officer, he was caught by the Japanese and he was kept as prisoner of war. By chance, what happens? When he was taken to the jail, he was in the ship. He jumped from the ship. He wanted to release himself. He wanted to snatch the chains of prison, and he wanted to get himself free. He wanted to get himself free. But the Japanese soldier fired, and the bullet struck him somewhere in the back, and he fell into the sea. By chance, that fellow falls in front of a Japanese doctor's residence. Now, here rises the question. My dear children, I have a question for you now. If you were in place of that doctor, what would you do? Would you accept the prisoner? Would you accept the prisoner as your guest? Would you treat him? Or would you let him die? You would not treat him, or you would hand him over to the police? This is a very big question. And if we solve this question, how we should treat our enemies, how a doctor should treat the enemy, whether he should consider the person his real enemy or should he treat him, what should be done to that? This is a million rupee question. And my dear children, this is the theme of this chapter. Now, let's come to the introduction. Story highlights how a Japanese doctor saves the life of an American prisoner of war and rises above the narrow prejudices of enmity, personal enmity or national enmity even. A doctor must consider himself a noble person first. Nationality does matter, but what matters the most is humanity, right? So, introduction I have already given you. Let's move further. After introduction, setting. The whole setting of the story is in Japan. Actually, Japan is a land of islands. Is a nation consisting of so many islands, right? In the year 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. A war was going on between America and Japan, and Japanese were so hostile that they attacked upon America with all power and vigor. And the resultant was that, do you know later what happened? The resultant was, resultant was not good, my dear. Hiroshima and Nagasaki, they were the outcome of this war. Right? So the theme, this particular story gives the message that humanism transcends all man-made prejudices and barriers. Humanism. What is humanism? Humanism is kindness, compassion for each other. If we have kindness in our heart for other human beings, certainly this evil of enmity would always would vanish from this world, and this world would become the most habitable place to live. And this is what we require at this time. This is the requirement of the time. So, my dear children, let's read this story and find out for ourselves what enmity is actually, and how this enemy, whether this enemy is saved by the doctor, or whether the doctor hands him over to the police or the authorities. Right? So, let's read this story for ourselves. Open your books. Well, before we read, let's discuss about the characters. First of all, Dr. Sadao Hockey. Who is Dr. Sadao Hockey? He is a Japanese doctor who has been trained in America. Right? Then comes Sadao's father, a very considerate father. Considerate and very concerned for his child's education. Then comes Hana. Who is Hana? Hana is a very soft-spoken, very considerate lady. She met Dr. Sadao in America during his training there, and they become friends, and after that they get married. They have 2 children also, right? An officer, the messenger of the general, a person who comes to Dr. Sadao's house with the message of the general. Then comes the old general, General Takima, who is the head of the state of Japan and who is the chief of the army. Right? Then there are 3 servants in Sadao's house, who are those: one gardener, one Yumi. Yumi, she is the governess of the children, and the cook is there. So these are 9 characters are there in this story. So, well students, let's come to the chapter. Okay? Open your book. Okay? Open now. Let's start the chapter. Enemy. As we have already discussed, this chapter belongs to a war, Second World War, that was in 1939, that began in 1939 and ended in 1945. Right? So let's read it. But before you read, it is the time of the World War. An American prisoner of war is washed ashore in a dying state and is found at the doorstep of a Japanese doctor. Should he save him as a doctor or hand him over to the army as a patriot? Now, this story starts with a question that really shakes up our mind, actually raises a question about the duty of a doctor. What should a doctor do in a situation if he finds himself in a dilemma, whether he should serve his country and be a true patriot and kill the enemy soldier, or he should cure the injured soldier and save his life. Now, this question I put to you. What do you suggest in this matter? What should a doctor do? Suppose we have war with a country, and by chance the soldier of that country falls on your doorstep and you're a doctor. What would you do? Would you save his life, or would you hand him over to the police? Now, this is the question. And the most suitable answer will be provided by this particular story. Enemy. The conflict in the mind of the doctor, how he solves this, how he reaches a conclusion, right? So we shall read in the story for ourselves. So my dear children, let's start it. Dr. Sadao Hockey's house was built on a spot of Japanese coast where as a little boy he had often played. But before that, before I start the story, let me tell you that this is the story somewhere of 1940s when America was fighting the war against Japan. History tells it. At that time, soldiers, they were sent to opponent countries, and they fought war there. They had very brutal situations that come in front of them, they came across, and thus this war was a real, I would say, mind shakers. It was a really, it really tormented the minds, tormented the life, disturbed the life of the whole world at that time, right? And further, this story is really a great outcome of this war, and gave the world a lesson that the real happiness is found only in peace and brotherhood, and the service to the humanity is the ultimate, you can say, virtue of human being, and one must carry on with it. One must persist with it. So Dr. Sadao Hockey, we were just reading about. Dr. Sadao Hockey's house was built on a spot of a Japanese coast where as a little boy he often played. Now this is Japan, and Japan's one of the islands. Actually Japan is a group of islands, and on the crest of a low hill, right, this house was situated. It was the low square stone house that was set upon rocks. Now this was the house that was set upon the rocks just at the coast of Japanese island, right? The low square stone house that was set upon rocks well above a narrow beach that was outlined with bent pine. As a boy, Sadao had climbed up. These are the pine trees that just outline the whole beach, and as young boy, Sadao used to climb up these pine trees and used to enjoy. As a boy, Sadao had climbed the pines, supporting himself on his bare feet, and he had seen men do in the South Seas when they climb for coconuts. People often do in South Seas. They just they are barefoot, and they just took the help of the trunk of the tree. They just catch it, they just hold it with both the hands, and they climb the trees like this. Okay, so what happened? His father had taken him often to the islands of those seas, and never had failed to say to the little brave boy at his side. Father often took him to different islands. Actually, I told you, Japan is a country of islands, right? And his father, as a true patriot, he often took his boy to different islands and showed him the wealth of Japan. And he never had failed to say to the little brave boy at his side, what did he say? He said, "Those islands yonder, they are visible at the other end where our sight can go. That is called yonder. Yonder is a place where earth and sky seem to meet. Right? Seem to meet, I am saying. That is called yonder. Those islands yonder, they are the stepping stones to the future for Japan. These islands are stepping stones. This is Sadao and Sadao's father, right? These islands are the stepping stones to Japan's future. Why? Because Japanese people, they are so patriotic, so hardworking that they uh, change the course of success for themselves overnight. Right? They have great spirit of patriotism and hard work. You know, one thing I tell you, Japanese people even often walk for 11 hours a day. Yes, this is the spirit. One point I would quote here, कि you can see कि in 1945 Japan was totally destroyed, and still after 1945 they recovered themselves, and now again they have reached the second or third spot in the world where the technological advancements are concerned. This is called Japan. So they are, this line shows the conviction of Sadao's father, that he was a true patriot and had a great belief in himself. So when he said this, so Sadao asked, "Where shall we step from them, father?" Sadao had asked seriously. Then answer came, "Who knows, beta? Who knows?" His father had answered, "Who can limit our future? It depends on what we make it." This is the line I just want to say. I want to say that this great man, Sadao Hoku's father, said, what? Who can limit our future? The progress of a country, it shows here, depends upon the people, what people make it. It is people who make the country, not the resources, not the wealth, or not anything else. If people, they are serious enough, they have potential, they have mind, they have commitment to themselves to raise the standard of the country, certainly the sky would be limit for them. And that is what Sadao's father's statement proclaims here. Yes, there is no limit to their future. He had a great regard for his country, right? And this is what he told to Sadao also. Now, come to next page number 25. Sadao had taken this into his mind, as he did everything his father said. He was a true, you can say, very faithful, right? As a true son, as a real son, he obeyed his father's instructions. Whatsoever he said, he followed it, right? Now, his father was a serious sort of person. His father, who never joked or played with him, but who spent infinite pains upon him. What does it mean? That he had to bear the hardships of life for the sake of lifting the status of his child. He was very much concerned father, who was his only son. Sadao was the only son of his father. Sadao knew that his education was his father's chief concern. His father was very much worried about his education, and for this reason he had been sent to 22 to America. Sadao was sent to America. He had believed that his father wanted to make him. His father wanted to make him what? A doctor. And doctor for medical practice, for education of medical, he was sent to the USA at the time, because at the time the study at USA was famous all over. USA. This is USA where Sadao was sent. USA, United States of America, where he was sent. Right? Now, again come to the page. For this reason, he had been sent at 22 to America to learn all that he could be learned of surgery and medicine. He had come back at 30 after spending 8 years there. And before his father died, he had seen Sadao become famous not only as a surgeon but as a scientist. Now, this is the additional feature of his life, that he was not only one of the most favorable and most liked doctor, famous doctor of Japan at the time, but he was one of the great scientists also. Scientist because he was perfecting a discovery which would render wounds entirely clean. He had developed a tincture, an ointment that could render the wounds clean absolutely. Right? He had not been sent abroad with the troops also. Now this is the line here that is very important. Ki at the time, as I told you, Japan was in war against America, and along with the troops, army troops, doctors were also sent to just to cure the soldiers, the wounded soldiers, and it was Sadao's turn also. But Sadao was not sent with the troops to the front. Why? Because he was perfecting a discovery in cleaning the wounds, so that's why he was not disturbed. One more reason was there. What? General might need an operation for a condition for which he was now being treated medically, and for thus possibility Sadao was being kept in Japan. General, who is general here? General, he is general here. General, you can say the head of the state of Japan, for Japan at that time. General Takima, Japan's head of the state and head of the army at the time. This man was involved with a medical problem. He required medical attention. And since Sadao was at the time the best doctor of Japan at the time, so he was kept to take care of this man, General Takima. So he was not sent to the front. So this question may arise: why was Sadao not sent to front? Just because these two reasons, he was not sent to the front. Okay. Now, clouds were rising from the ocean now. That was the background that I told you. Now starts the story. Clouds were rising from the ocean now. The unexpected warmth of past few days had the night drawn heavy fog from the cold waves. Sadao watched mist hide outlines of the little island near the shore, and then come creeping up the beach below the house, wreathing around the pines. Now this fog, as you have been seeing, this fog was raising gradually, and it was moving towards the island, and it was covering the whole island from the pine trees. This fog was penetrating the pine trees and moving towards Dr. Sadao's house, and he knew that in a short while his house would be completely wrapped, completely covered, right? What does this word mean, wreathing around? Wreathing means it was penetrating through, right? The house, penetrating through. Then he would go into the room where Hana, his wife, would be waiting for him with the two children. And now he was expecting that his wife would be waiting for him, and even now mist has been surrounding the whole entire house, so he wanted to go inside his house. So dear children, I'm going to finish this particular part here, and let's move to next part after this.